Welcome to this quick watch workshop from the Early Years Southwest Stronger Practice Hub. My name is Sarah Hercod, I'm the area Senko, and I'm going to be talking about dealing with dysregulation. This is workshop 1 of our emotional regulation quick watch series. I'm hoping that by the end of this session you will be able to confidently say that you can understand what dysregulation is and that you know how to support with emotional regulation in the moment. Emotional regulation is a strong predictor of academic achievement and success because it gives us better attention and problem solving skills. It gives us improved performance in tasks that involve delayed gratification, inhibition and long-term goals. It gives us a higher tolerance and resilience to frustration, and without self-regulation we can't grow healthy brains, emotions or even bodies. Emotional dysregulation literally impacts on physical development as well as mental health and academic success. What is dysregulation then? We've all seen these faces, but what's actually happening here? I can't tell you the story behind why each of these children are dysregulated, but I can explain what dysregulation can lead to. We can have tantrums, strained relationships, friendship issues, anger, withdrawal, anxiety. We can see that some of these are in the moment responses to dysregulation and some get developed over time. The Early Years Evidence Store gives us 5 approaches and tells us that multiple approaches support emotional regulation. We'll look at those in the next Quick Watch workshop, which is called Strategies for Self-Regulation, but I'll also give you some quick wins in that workshop to take away and start practicing. In this session, we'll look a little bit more closely at what happens when a child becomes dysregulated. So let's look first at what happens when we can't self-regulate, and this is Dan Siegel's model of how the brain responds to stress. So if we think about our hand as being the brain and our wrist as being the brain stem, this brain stem connects to our nervous system and to the rest of our body. If we think of our thumb as being our limbic system, where we process our emotions, and if we think of our fingers as being the cortex, where we rationalise and we think and we understand. Let's tuck the emotions inside the cortex like they are in this illustration, and then think about an example that might support us to understand what children are experiencing when they become dysregulated. An example I'm going to use with you today is an adult one. So let's think about when we are driving down the road or cycling down the road and someone or something is making you really stressed. So perhaps it's someone driving too close to the back of your car or your bike and you don't understand why they're doing that. It's making you feel quite uncomfortable. Maybe you've got your child on the back or in the back of the car and you're starting to think about their safety. This is going to make you feel emotional. And when you reach a stage of dysregulation with it, bang, the cortex unravels, leaving your limbic system exposed, and all of those emotions, fear, panic, rage, flood into another system. Perhaps your right foot, if you're driving, moves across to the brake pedal because you're going to give them a flash of red brake lights to warn them off of it. Now, I'm not recommending this. If you would go ahead and do that, it makes the car jolt. The kids start asking annoying questions. You can't think straight. The kids get the full force of your emotions as the person who was tailgating you overtakes you on a really dodgy bend. And you have reached dysregulation, like this little child in the picture here. The road rage scenario demonstrates how dysregulation reduces our capacity to think straight. So in that situation, we are left with virtually no words. Maybe the only thing we can think of to do is gesture or facial expression because that's all we can manage. And the impact of this on our cognition, on our processing and on our language is a bit like an escalator in a building. So as our dysregulation levels go up, that's like one lift going up. But but the other list goes down. And that's our thinking, our knowing, our remembering, our listening, our communication abilities. They all reduce in that moment. So with every escalation of stress levels, there's a drop in cognition and language. And that's what this little girl's experiencing here. So we have to be quite clever and quite careful in how we step in to support her. And obviously, in that moment, what we want is for somebody to feel calm and not be dysregulated. And if you think about our little road rage scenario, if we had an adult passenger in the car, in the front of the car with us, or maybe if you're on your bike, there's somebody passing alongside you who's ready to respond. And they could respond in any of these 4 ways. I'm sure some of these descriptions will trigger some memories for you. We've all got memories of school and our behaviours being dealt with in some really ineffective ways. But the one I want to focus on today is the emotion coaching style of response, because the response that we get when we're dysregulated can either make us feel worse or it can make us feel better. It can help us calm down and restore us, or it can make us feel even more unsafe, unheard and unseen. So what our strategy needs to be doing, the aim, the outcome, the learning objective if you like, is to lower the blood pressure of the person who is dysregulated, to help them to breathe more deeply, to reduce their muscle tension and to de-escalate those stress levels so that the language and cognition and processing levels can come back up. So if we think about the language that we're using, first of all, with children who have achieved 2 to 3 word stage of development, using open-ended comments and questions are going to work fine with a child who's at that word level ability. We can say things like, oh, something's happened, or you look really uncomfortable, or can I help you? But for children who are at a single word stage, they need a more directive approach for our emotional coaching style to be more effective. And so for them it's an oh no, or here, cuddle. And can you see how your body language and your facial expression and even your own ability to handle the stress levels is really important here? The children in the moment need us to be their calm and safe space. As adults, if we go back to the road rage situation, we can do most of that in our heads. And Leslie, in an episode of Ted Lasso, which I've just been enjoying recently, offers this advice. He says, find out before you flip out. And we can do that. We can do that in our heads, and we can use language to do that because we developed as adults language, emotional literacy. We can ask questions out loud, or we can think things through in our head, and we can rationalize. So we can self-regulate, or we know who to go and find who is helpful for helping us regulate. So a best friend or a family member who shows us the high empathy and guidance. But young children don't have those skills. They can't find out before they flip out because they haven't reached that stage of development yet. And that's like our road rage scenario. So because young children are still developing their self-regulation skills, they need us to scaffold that thinking while they're practicing their language skills. So in terms of the children we're working with, developing our emotion coaching style is key to supporting them with dysregulation. And we'll look at some high empathy and high guidance approaches that are suggested by the Early Years Evidence Store in the next Quick Watch workshop. So all this takes time, all this takes repetition, and it takes a lot of patience. And if you think about it, like making a path through a field of long grass, the first attempt is always going to be a bit uncomfortable. You might not be able to see the path very clearly, and when you turn around to come back, it's barely there. But with each repetition, the path is going to get clearer. And this is what it's like to learn any new skill. To cement healthy attitudes and routines in the early years is difficult, and we don't always see the results in the time that the children are with us. But it's much harder to break bad habits further down the road than form good ones early on. So we get these children first, and their next teacher will thank us if we do that practice and do that work with them Children need opportunities to practice the skills at the right level for them, and that's what we're going to look at in the next quick watch workshop, which will be called Strategies for Self-Regulation. So before I say goodbye and leave you, have a little think now about anything from this session that you will go and try out straight away, that maybe you'll talk to someone, maybe a colleague about, and how this training might support your partnership work with parents. And hopefully I'll see you in session 2. Bye.